And we're back on the Good Morning Artesia radio show. And joining us now is General Greg Zanetti, candidate for governor of New Mexico and all-around great guy. Good morning, General.
Good morning, Gene. How are you this morning?
Hey, we are looking forward to just a wonderful day today. The weather's finally turned super sunny, and I don't know that the winds are going to blow. I don't think they're going to blow 60 miles an hour today, so I think we'll have a pleasant day in southeast New Mexico. Speaking of the winds and everything, I finally saw the video clip yesterday of the guy in Texas in the red Chevy pickup truck that got knocked over by the tornado, and then he got knocked back upright and drove off.
I think that should be Chevy's commercial from here on out.
I know.
Just show that over and over again.
Our trucks can take a licking, even a tornado, and you want to buy a Chevy truck. So that's pretty amazing deal. One of your past experiences is with the New Mexico Army National Guard, and you at one point were serving in Guantanamo Bay, or affectionately known as Gitmo. You were even the deputy commander at Gitmo. What was that like being down in Cuba with all those wonderful people that we had captured as a part of the 9/11 process we were going through?
Actually, it was fascinating. I can't tell you how much I learned about the enemy and how they think. And it's one of my big concerns about our southern border is these people coming across our border, and we just think they think like we do, and they don't. But, we also had relations with the Cubans. We met with the Cubans once a month on border issues. Mm-hmm. And so, I've worked the New Mexico border. I've worked the demilitarized zone in Korea as well as the Czech border. I know a lot about borders. And so, the Gitmo experience was really good to learn how the enemy thinks and also about politics. I can't tell you how much I learned about politics at Gitmo. But anyway, it was a good experience.
It turned into a political situation when it really didn't need to be. But something that's always been curious to me, that Gitmo or Guantanamo Bay, it's on the Cuban island, right? It's in It's right on Cuba. But I thought
we're at the far eastern end of the island, and actually it's very pretty. I mean, it kind of looks like New Mexico with an ocean. And if you were a real estate developer, Gene, you'd be looking out there and go, well, we could put the golf course here. Yeah, the horse riding stables would be over here.
Yeah.
The resort would be here. Tennis courts here. I mean, it's a pretty neat place just in terms of the weather and how pretty it is.
Yeah. Well, it's always kind of intrigued me because, Castro takes power, confiscates all the private property. People flee to Florida. It's 90 miles away. The Bay of Pigs, debacle that happened when Kennedy became president. All of the history that we have. Can't get Cuban cigars, the whole thing.
Right.
And we have a military presence in Cuba. I just find that really odd.
Well, we signed a treaty with them. Back before Castro came into power, we signed a treaty in the 1930s that said we could have use of a base there in Cuba. And actually, at the time, it made a lot of sense. The Navy would use it for its shakedown cruises. They might leave Norfolk, and then, they'd sail for a certain number of days, and then they would go and kind of regroup in Cuba. And, the sailors liked it, and it gave us a little toehold in the Caribbean. Well, when Castro came to power, we continued to honor the treaty, and we owed them rent every year for, using the land. Mm-hmm. So we sent Castro a check, and he cashed it. So we said that, all right, you accepted the treaty on the terms, and every year since then, we have sent Castro a check saying we're paying for it. He only cashed one. The others, I think they finally told him, well, don't cash them. I mean, that means you're accepting the deal.
Yeah, I know.
We think he threw him in the top drawer of his dresser, but we don't know.
Yeah, it is just an interesting thing because we have a base there, and it has lasted as long as it has, the situation with the United States and Cuba and all that interesting aspect of things. With your military background, you probably have been following and have followed with interest the Russian incursion into Ukraine.
Yep.
And none of us are on the ground and know exactly what's going on, but you listen to some pundits talk about it, and they talk about how the Russians are bogged down, and the Ukrainian army, the resistance, is putting up a really tough fight. Do we really know what's going on in Ukraine, and what do you observe the Russian army, the success of their mission so far as you see it?
Well, again, I mean, I'm like you. I don't know what's going on over there. I mean, we get propaganda from both sides. If I were looking at this just from, reading the propaganda on both sides, as well as what you can get out of Germany, what you can get out of Israel, what you can get out of France, if you then start peeling away the differences and you start getting down to what they're in agreement on, you can start to get a better picture of this. I just think the Russians are squeezing. It looks more like a siege. Mm-hmm. They are more than happy to let the West get bored with this over the next several months and continue to just squeeze and squeeze and squeeze down. Meanwhile, they keep talking about the Ukrainians are going to have, this counteroffensive, and I think, well, yeah, but your army is isolated from each other. You've got, groups in some city, another city, another city, but to have a coordinated attack, I think that's going to be difficult. So maybe to give context to this and why I don't think that Putin's going to give up, I want to take you back 15 to 18 years, and it's a series of speeches that Putin gave across Europe and the Middle East and Asia, and it went like this, Gene. Why are we kowtowing to the Americans? We have all the technological and engineering capability you could want in Europe, particularly from Germany. We have all the natural resources you could want in Russia and the stands, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, these places. Mm-hmm. And we have the factory floor to the world in Asia. We don't have to fight the Americans. We can ignore them. Let's unite. Let's build roads. Let's build bridges. Let's build commodity exchanges. Let's build internet banking, et cetera, et cetera. He said, let's build a giant land power, and let's use our own currency to do the trade, no longer using dollars. And to our friends in the Middle East, why don't you join us in this great endeavor to relaunch, at the time he called it, the New Silk Road. Mm-hmm. Well, look what's happened since Ukraine. China, India, Iran have all basically joined with the Russians.
Yes.
And you look at that block on a map, and you start to see Putin's vision kind of coming true. And then you might have seen last week the Chinese were in Saudi Arabia saying, hey, we want you to start trading oil in yuan and not just dollars. And so what we're seeing now is a remaking of the world order. And we've got confused and inept leaders in Washington, D.C., who can't see past a 24-hour news cycle. And I would probably say the same thing here in New Mexico. We've got a governor who thinks the same way. So I guess the question is, what should we in New Mexico do about it? Because actually, I think we could benefit from what's going on, and we could be a benefit to the nation.
Now, there was a column, and I don't have it here anymore, but it was published in the Roswell Daily Record this week, and they called it, the writer called it a immoral or not above board, the fact that we would take advantage of the situation in Europe and Ukraine. I don't look at it that way. I'm sure you don't look at it that way. But I find it interesting that our president goes to these very countries that you just mentioned, Iran and the Saudi Arabians and even Venezuela, and begs them to produce more oil and get more oil into the world market to moderate the world price of oil, given that everybody's saying right now they're going to stop buying from Russia. But he hasn't gone to Houston. He hasn't gone to Midland. He hasn't, he hasn't even come to Artesia, for that matter, to come and talk to oil and gas producers in our own country about what they could do to do that. What's your impression of why they're not coming to the United States, oil producers?
I think they're so married to an orthodoxy that it's almost become a religion. That they have to do the Green Deal at the expense of the fossil fuels in this country, even if it means that all Americans suffer. It's hard to reconcile what you just described. But what we should be doing is basically what you're leading to. Yes, we should. The Keystone Pipeline would be done by now, and we wouldn't be worried about this if it hadn't been for Biden. And, of course, MLG is on board with all this stuff. But what we should be doing is, beyond drill, baby, drill, we've got to loosen the regulations and the rules, and we've got to start pumping like crazy. But beyond that, think of what we have here in New Mexico, Gene. We've got uranium. We've got lithium for all these electric vehicles that these guys want. We have 4 of the 17 rare earth elements. We have potash for fertilizer. I mean, think about what New Mexico could be if we started unleashing these natural resources, which America needs and are now being cut off, from Russia and these other parts of the world. But you're right. Our leadership is thinking the exact opposite. It's hard to fathom.
It really is. There was an article in the Roswell paper today about a survey done with an airplane and sophisticated equipment. The methane is it's even worse than we thought. And all of this is evidence that's going to be used to curtail this type of activity. New Mexico, in addition to being a cultural spot and a tourism spot, could also be the energy producer. We could save California and Gavin Newsom's bacon if we built a nuclear power plant out here and tied it into the grid and just started pumping energy back to Gavin. We could make a ton of money off of California if we did something like that.
Gene, I'm smiling at the other end of this line. Yes, and we talked about this on your show, I think, last time.
Mm-hmm.
These small modular nuclear reactors, the size of a McDonald's, they'll power 60,000 homes. They won't melt down. And we were the atomic state, the uranium state, and it's not in competition with oil and gas.
Right.
And so, and then we talked about how we married these up with desalination plants and pump some of this brackish water, of which we have like 1,000 years worth of brackish water in this state. We start cleaning the brackish water so we don't end up sending it all down to Texas because brackish water doesn't have water rights attached.
Sure. Hey, General, we need to break for news. Can you stick around for another segment?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gene. I talk too much.
No, it's okay. General Greg Zanetti will be with us on another segment. This is KS.